The Charlotte Hornets, they get a win against the Brooklyn Nets, a tightly contested win last night. No Brandon Miller, though. We discuss it all today, Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast. And as always, that includes YouTube. You can see him right there. That's Doug Branson, my co-host. You can also find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. And I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me every weekday from 12 to 3 on Sports Radio 92.7 WFNZ, 92.7 FM. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. What is that?
Game Time?
Yep, thank you. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. How about the Charlotte Hornets? They get a win last night. After the line, according to FanDuel, being 8 in favor of the Nets. 8.5. Thank you. Yes, a very important half point to show just how little FanDuel thought and the bookies all felt about the Charlotte Hornets. They're able to rise on top, really, because of Terry Rozier and his incredible shot making down the stretch. Not only were they without LaMelo Ball in this game, but Brandon Miller, after returning in the second half of that game against the Knicks, where we thought he was going to be okay, no go in this one. And so this was going back to your tweet about watching a Charlotte Hornets game is like, we were playing for the Charlotte Hornets is like, Saw, the Saw franchise, the horror film franchise.
Yeah.
If you play for the Hornets, that's great, but you're going to lose a foot. It's just going to happen. So we didn't get the two things that we care most about probably with this franchise, but they still win, Doug, 129-128. And as Eric Collins said last night, big tip of the cap to Terry Rozier for just incredible shot making in the second half.
Yeah, 37 points overall, not just in the second half, by the way. I mean, he brought them back at the beginning of that second quarter. There was a stretch there from about 10:30 to like 9:30 or 8:30 in that second quarter where he was just a monster. I mean, he was grabbing defensive rebounds. He was running the break. He was passing in the break, passing alley-oops, and scoring. And he really stepped up as a leader for this team. He had 7 assists in that second quarter, which tied a career high. And it was an important second quarter because the Hornets played offensively well in that first quarter, but gave up 37 points. And Brooklyn came out in the beginning of that second quarter with a couple of possessions, and it looked like, this seems familiar. Seems like the New York Knicks game where, a 10-point, where a 5-point lead suddenly becomes a 10-point lead, suddenly becomes a 20-point lead. But Terry Rozier did not allow that to happen in this game. He was all over the place. Steve Clifford, after the game, also praising Terry Rozier's defense, which we don't get a ton of. But he said, look, they weren't as good defensively when he wasn't on the floor. And this was a game where, they generally weren't good defensively. They weren't good at getting defensive rebounds. Walker, I don't know what we watched because you don't typically...
It's kind of true. Yeah.
You don't typically win games giving up 22 offensive rebounds for 31 second chance points. You don't typically win those games. You almost never win those games on the road. And that's what the Hornets managed to do. It was crazy.
Well, and that has to be because of the offense, right? I mean, I was thinking about this as well. The Brooklyn Nets got to the century mark in the third quarter of last night's game. And it was like, I think they scored, what was it? At the end of the third quarter, the Hornets and the Nets just traded awful defensive possessions with one another. It's like, hey, we don't care about hanging on to the last shot. We're going to score quickly. Then the other team said, okay, it was almost like they were playing a game at the end of the third quarter. Can I score fast enough to give the other team more time? And eventually the Brooklyn Nets capitalized with the bucket to officially end the third quarter. It was like they got to 100 with a minute left, and then they were at like 106 at the end. It was nuts. But it was because of the shot making. And they hold the Nets to 22 in the fourth. That's what allowed them to come back as well. At least there was some limit of production to the opposition at the end here, but it was because they were just able to hit a ton of shots. And And it was Terry. PJ, bad shooting night for him. Those are starting to become more of a thing for PJ after a hot start, which is frustrating. So PJ not shooting well, but Bryce sure did. How about Bryce McGowens? Starting lineup, 14 points, 4 of 5 from him. Oh, so you had Miles Bridges miss 1 3-pointer. Terry missed 2. Bryce missed 1. Nick Smith Jr. didn't miss a single 3-pointer that he took. And Gordon Hayward hit 2 of his 4. They just shot 3-pointers well. 58% from 3 to be exact. That's how you win a ball game, Doug. That's how you overcome a lot of your deficiencies.
Well, and that's how they won ball games 2 years ago when they went to the play-in and won 43 games, right? I mean, they just shot. Borrego ball was just shooting your opponent out of the building, but not playing any defense, not getting back on transition defense, occasionally giving up a lot of offensive rebounds. That was the kind of team that we saw under Borrego. And so, look, this was... look, when you make 21 3-pointers and you go 58% from 3, that's something that's great, and it will win you ball games. And it can blow teams out if you do play. Like, they could have blown the Nets out in this game had they played a little bit of defense and gotten, held them to 15 offensive rebounds instead of 22. You probably win this game by 10 or 15, but instead it was a track meet, as you said, not just in the third quarter, but in the fourth quarter. There was a sequence there at the end of the game where it was Hornets go up by 3, Nets get an offensive rebound put back, deficit goes down to 1, and then the Hornets go back up by 3. That happened for 4 straight minutes to end the game, and then the Hornets get a final stop. They did play better defense in the fourth quarter. They did finally hold the Nets under 30 points. But this was an offensive game. It's not sustainable. They're not going to shoot 58% from 3. They haven't shot well from 3 all season. I think you had Bryce McGowens with his hair on fire because he had an opportunity to start. NSJ got some important minutes in this game. He hit all 3 of his threes. He's been doing that all season. I mean, there are issues with him defensively. There are issues with him in terms of passing because he's playing like a little Energizer bunny out there. He's like beep, 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 all over the court. I mean, it's crazy. Like, his effort jumps out because everybody else is sort of playing at sort of 1x speed, and he's at 2x speed. So I think he's got to figure out a way to get the high highs and the low lows to kind of level out a little bit. But he hits all of his threes, and it allows this team, I think, to stay in this game, but it's not sustainable. I doubt the Hornets today are in the film room looking at all their three-point makes, right? They're looking at the defensive mistake. As much as Jason Kidd of the Dallas Mavericks, I don't know if you saw this clip where he implored the reporters to keep it positive. As much as I'm sure they're positive about the win, I can guarantee you that they're looking at all of the defensive mistakes. They're looking at all of the offensive rebounds. And it wasn't all on one player. I didn't think Mark Williams particularly had a strong, physical game in this one.
No, he didn't.
But Miles Bridges let a couple go. This was when you allow 22 offensive rebounds, that takes a full team in effort. I don't know if that's a word, but it's not effort.
It makes sense. I guess it makes sense. Last thing before we move on, did you think Cam Johnson's shot was good? Got a great look at it at the end.
It felt like it was going to be because it just felt like that kind of game where no team was capable of getting a stop. And I really felt like, when he let it go, I thought that was an uh-oh moment. But the Hornets get a win.
Also, strong, just felt like a strong Eric Collins game. Eric Collins was in his bag in this one. There were some great calls at the end. Del Curry was appreciative of the never a doubt at the end. Love a good classic, but needs to be said, never a doubt. Brought you a different cadence with his humdiddly D's. It wasn't the volume at 100, a little bit of a different shakeup with the humdiddly D. Strong Eric Collins game for me.
But that was an Eric Collins that finally got to stretch his legs, right? That's an Eric Collins who's been sitting in coach in the airplane for a long time.
This one. Mm-hmm.
Right. He got some leg room. He got the leg room that he was getting. Again, I want to just point back because this felt like a Borrego game. It felt like that team 2 years ago when you had everybody shooting threes and knocking down threes and a lot of high-flying plays, a lot of offense. That's the kind of game that Eric Collins is made for, and he got a first-class upgrade, got to stretch his legs, got a glass of OJ, great. Got a warm towel on the forehead. He was feeling good.
Some Milano cookies.
I was too, by the way. All this talk about it being unsustainable, I don't care at this point because you just got to get wins. And Brooklyn's a good team. They're not a bad team, and they're right. They're in that zone where the Hornets are in the Eastern Conference, kind of right there at the bottom of the play-in. The Hornets on the outside looking in. So, I mean, you take that win, you just got to figure out a way to beat a team that's actually going to play a little bit of defense against you.
Oh, yeah. No, good win on the road. Nets got Cam Thomas back. They had just won 3 straight without Cam Thomas. Nothing but a good win.
I thought he was
here.
going to be out. I said in my preview he was going to be out. ESPN said he was going to be out. So it's not my fault. It's ESPN's fault. I have a baby. You know the deal.
I do know the deal. Let's move on. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Hum diddly dee!
Believe it or not, we have another, yes, even if he didn't play, we have another LaMelo Ball injury update. We'll get to that in just a moment. Not before FanDuel, though. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy, it's really easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, even more than that. We got a great Thursday night football game last night between the Cowboys and the Seahawks, where the Cowboys were able to come back. So not only do you get your NFL, but even if you wanted to go with some home cooking and just say, you know what, I want to feel good about the Hornets tonight, I'm going to take a chance on them. No Brandon Miller, no LaMelo. Maybe that means more opportunities for Nick Smith Jr., maybe more opportunities for Terry Rozier to be the high scorer. If you would have put money on that, then you would have won. You would have racked in on the cash, baby. Cashola. FanDuel. Go get there. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Doug, this has been the official week of LaMelo Ball injury updates. One has rolled in every day, which is important. I'm not even making fun of that fact. We need these updates, but it feels like we get a different update every single day. We have a new one. So, Doug, what do you have for us here?
It's not just every single day. I mean, we've been living this life, I feel like, for the past couple of years. In fact, I think I sort of mark my child's life by LaMelo Ball injury updates, right? It's like, that she started to crawl. Yeah, that was about 2 months after the ankle fracture update. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I'm just marking my life now on LaMelo Ball updates. I hope that ends, by the way. I would really like that to stop. I would like to just go back to using the regular Gregorian calendar instead of the LaMelo Ball ankle calendar.
It would be great. As soon as LaMelo stops getting injured, then you forget about your child's milestones. That would be that. It's a fair trade-off because we need a star in Hornets basketball again. And so, sorry, baby Branson, he's not going to remember your milestones. I'm sorry. This is the trade-off.
Here's the update. The team announced that LaMelo Ball's right ankle sprain, that's a P, not a T.
They got
a sprain.
Put that letter
they
in
thought
there,
it was a strain. Then they looked a little harder, put it under a microscope. I'm a doctor. And they said, that's not a strain. I've seen strains. That's no strain. That's a sprain. He'll be reevaluated in 1 week. 1 week, Walker.
All right, so do we do anything with this? Because it's okay. We're going to reevaluate him in 1 week. That means he's out indefinitely now. They finally gave a hard. He is out for this week of time. Then we'll reevaluate it. We have a report about him being out 4 weeks. We have reports about him being out an extended amount of time. So I don't think this does anything for me. I'm glad it doesn't get any worse, but it doesn't do anything for me. Does this injury update do anything for you?
Makes me a little bit scared if they're going to reevaluate in 1 week.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to reevaluate in 1 week and then all of a sudden he comes back, I'm going to be scared. I guess I have no choice but to trust that everyone involved is doing the right thing. But as I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, I mean, I'm getting flashes of Grant Hill. And Grant Hill, later in his life, looks back on his time with Detroit and blames the training staff there and that group there for ruining his career by misdiagnosing an ankle injury. So I'm not saying that's what's going on here. But what I'm saying is there are conflicting reports, and I don't know what's coming from who. The obvious, look, the team, Steve Clifford, Mitch Kupchak, the ownership group, all of their motivations would seemingly lie with LaMelo Ball getting back as quickly as possible and helping them win ball games and helping them make a play-in run. That would seem to be where their motivations lie. But then you have these reports from Shams saying it's a serious sprain, that caution will be taken. And then all of a sudden in the middle of this game, we get this 1 week reevaluation, which we should say is just a reevaluation. It's not 1 week and he's going to be back. It could be 1 week and it's like,
oh, that's why it doesn't
out.
do anything for me. Right, exactly. That's why it doesn't do anything for me.
But I'm scared. I'm just scared because this is a player that has had now we're up to 6, right? Yeah, what was this, 5 or 6? I've lost count of this. No, this is 5.
We had 3. We had 2 or
5.
3 with the left ankle. Now we have 2, I think, with the right. I think this is 5. I think.
Right. You throw in the wrist injury that cost him a significant amount of time as well, and you have 6. Okay, so we're dealing with all of that. And yet, look, he's got to. If he feels like he can play, you got to let him play. If he feels like he's healthy, you got to let him play. Because I just mentioned all of those motivations for the team, but you have to also consider what motivations may be lying with LaMelo Ball himself. This is a guy who was Rookie of the Year, got an All-Star bid, and now all of a sudden, all of that has been derailed by all of these injuries. The second All-Star bid's gone away. The third All-Star bid's gone away. And so for him, I think he's got to be thinking, I got to get back out here and play some games. So, I understand that, but I'm also scared that could cost him long term. And the team was just signed him to a max contract.
Well, and we continue to talk about the injuries more so to the point where you've made the distinction that this is now becoming the narrative about LaMelo. It's becoming the story about LaMelo, when the story at the beginning of this season was he's overcoming the injury and he has now vaulted into a new level of basketball. He's giving us the 25 points per game. I mention it all the time. He was doing everything, certainly offensively, that we had wanted him to do, or at least show improvement in. He hadn't reached the pinnacle, but he was certainly he's an all-star. Let's move on to something a little more debatable. LaMelo's an all-star. This is stupid to fight over. To now, Doug, this argument or this conversation sounds a lot like we were talking about last year, where, all right, now, if he's ready to go, do you hold him out longer? I hate that convo, right? That's so sports radio. We hear it all the time when somebody is, hey, do you play him at 80% or do you wait until he's 100% and then you bring him in? How much are you taking the power out of his hands? Do you protect the player from themselves? Yeah, I've talked about it nonstop my entire career, and it feels like it's rearing its head more so with LaMelo. I can just see it happening, right? The second season that type of conversation is surrounding the star of this team. Hopefully he comes back sooner, though. And I'm with you. I've been scared, Doug. I'm with you, but I've been scared.
I just wish that the circumstances around this were different, that there were people that weren't fighting for their jobs, essentially, that there wasn't this sort of looming reevaluation. That's not official. No one said that. I understand that. There's a little bit of speculation that goes into that, but also educated speculation, because we've seen how the histories of ownership changes play out. We know kind of what the deal is. And so, I just wish there were, I just hope, I'll say I hope instead of I wish. I hope that there is someone within the organization and someone around LaMelo that is focused on the fact that he's about to play out a 4 and 5 year contract. That's a lot of money and a lot of investment, and that his career has a long way to go. And that, yes, the story right now around him is injuries, but there is so much time to rewrite that story. But you're not going to be able to rewrite that story if your pen's always broken in half.
That was beautiful. Oh, you made something so dark, so beautiful. Val, take it. Thank you. All right, one more segment to go. Here's more poetry coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
It's a gift.
Oh, my.
We go from such beautiful poetry to the Baby Bees. How about them? Especially one in particular. We'll get to his performance and the Baby Bees performance in just a moment. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. What is it, Doug?
Game Time.
Thank you. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive, and they have all in prices that show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. Just buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. It's that easy. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event too, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats for all you procrastinators out there. Game Time, that's the place for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app or create an account and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. Locked On NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. One more segment to go. Locked On Hornets. Terry Rozier, the player of this game, when you go for 37 and get a career high in assists, by the way, that's an incredible game for Terry. I'm glad it came in a win. I'm glad it wasn't Jimmy Butlered by the Brooklyn Nets, and then you have the Kemba Walker 60-point per game just taken away. And so, like, here, Terry Rozier's 37-13 game, that career high came in a victory. But the Baby Bees, one especially, Nick Smith Jr., really showed up with some shot making. The three, I mean, he's just splashing them here. 3 of 3 from distance, Doug. What'd you make of Nick Smith Jr.'s performance and some other young ones out there on the court?
Well, again, I mean, his energy is just infectious. And you know, he made hustle plays too. It wasn't just about the 3-point makes. I mean, he was getting strip steals and not doing a ton of fouling, and you know, getting to the floor and getting loose balls. Like, Nick Smith Jr. was just all over the place. He's a player, and this will be great for his future as a utility player, is someone that you can like unleash on opponents. And that's what the Nets do with Cam Thomas. Like, Cam Thomas scores 26 off the bench. That's not unusual for Cam Thomas. He is as someone in the Substack chat put last night, he's a cheat code. Like, he's just somebody that you throw out there and it's like, wait, no, you can't play that guy against our bench. Come on, man, because he can just get a shot anywhere on the floor. I think Nick Smith Jr. is going to have that ability eventually, plus just, again, that infectious energy that can get steals. Now, the question with Nick Smith Jr., and I mentioned this in the first segment, I feel like he's going to be a player early on that has super high highs and super low lows, meaning there are plays where you go, wow, that's incredible. I don't see many players making plays like that. And then you have these other plays that he makes that are just like mind-numbingly bad defensive decisions. Like, what was he thinking there? Why was he in that place? Why did he miss that assignment? Or bad fouls, things like that, where you go, man, I don't see many NBA level players making that kind of play in the bad way. So how does he? I think the future of his career, the trajectory of his career, will be based on how much he can level that out.
Well, and with Nick Smith Jr., we can already project the conversation in the future for him. It's, you know, will Nick Smith Jr. do enough to stay on the floor? And the other projected conversation is, are the Hornets going to get to a point, are they already at that point where you just let them make the mistakes because you're not going to be a postseason team? Are we that early, it's 16, 17 games into the season, where Steve Clifford just needs to go ahead and suit Nick Smith Jr. up? Because clearly the kid is very talented. He's fun. He's a bucket maker. We need shooting. He provides that. So is that something where, I understand it might not even be all the way winning basketball, but is this the time where you just let Nick Smith Jr. get his 14 minutes a game and learn his rookie season? Is that something Steve Clifford does?
Well, if they get fully healthy, he's going to Greensboro.
Yeah.
I just hate to break it to everyone, but that's going to be what it is. But he could be in Greensboro right now, and he's not. And I think that's a testament to the work that he's put in, the things that they're seeing behind the scenes in practice. Like, there's a reason that he's on the floor ahead of James Bouknight. It's not that, like, the team feels like they have to play the rookie in that situation. It's that, look, if Clifford thought that Bouknight would give them a better chance to win than playing Nick Smith Jr., Clifford wants to win ball games. He would play Bouknight. This is all about playing the guys that he feels like gives them the best chance to win. And so, you know, coming off an offseason where that Bouknight, Kai Jones draft just looked apocalyptic. Looked really bad. Bouknight might get another shot here, but it looked really bad. It is nice to see Nick Smith Jr., the late first-round pick, belong. He looks like he belongs on the floor, and he looks like there's a lot of promise. And we're not going to be saying, oh, Nick Smith Jr. has to have like a really impressive summer or he's going back to Greensboro. He has to improve. He has to have a good summer, but we're not going to be like, wow, based on those horrible results from his rookie year. I mean, that's what we were doing with Bouknight. We've been doing that with Bouknight for his entire career, going, wow, he's, he has to come in and look amazing. No, Nick Smith Jr. has done enough to look like he's belonged, where he can continue to make improvements. And the way he plays, Walker, the way I see him play, I have no doubt that guy's going to put the work in off the floor.
Yeah. Also, Bryce McGowens deserves a shout because, here Bryce and Nick Smith Jr., they go 8 of 11 from the field last night, and they go 7 of 8 from distance. So if you would have told me that, then I probably would have told you, yeah, they're going to win, even if it was as dicey as it was down the stretch. Just a monster shooting volume from both of those guys. And Bryce, not a great three-point shooter by any stretch. He's actually starting to have been hitting the last couple of games, but especially in this one. Missed his first three-pointer pretty late into the action, maybe late third quarter, maybe fourth. But so nice production from Bryce getting into the starting lineup because of Brandon Miller's absence. Any words on Bryce?
He desperately needed this game, I feel like, because Bouknight does come back. His place was secured in the rotation by Steve Clifford. Even when Bouknight came back, Clifford was like, no, Bryce, it's Bryce, unless there's an injury or something else, and then Bouknight will get some minutes. So he had that secured, but I think he needed this game to say, all right, you can trust me in these moments, because this is what Cody Martin was for the team several years ago. Was a guy that like, all right, a couple of guys are out. Let's plug this guy in as a starter. You got to give me something on this night. You can't give me nothing on this night. If you're playing off the bench and you're playing with a couple of other guys like PJ Washington or Nick Richards or somebody that we can depend on a little bit, then you can give me nothing occasionally. But if I'm going to put you in the starting lineup, you got to give me something. And he set the tone from the jump, had those 8 points in the first quarter. And I'm sure because Clifford pregame mentioned that, when talking about Bryce McGowens, that like, look, Bryce, if you're a player that a coach would put in a starting lineup in any kind of situation, you're talented enough to go out there and score 20, 25 points. It's really just about how many shots it's going to take for you to get that, right? It's like these guys, if they shot 30 times, they're going to get some buckets. That's because they're talented players. But he was able to be efficient with it, and he did the right thing with the ball a lot of the time. And so that I think has gained him. I really feel like now his place is locked in the rotation. The question now is, I would love to see Bryce occasionally give you 13, 15, 17 points, off the bench on a night, like get a little bit of hot and be that guy they can go to on the bench for scoring, because they haven't had that all season.
Last thing before we head out here, just Mark Williams. Mark Williams still a baby B, right? Like if Bryce McGowens is,
He's playing like it. He's playing like it.
So he is. And look, Mark Williams, I know you always bring up how we have such varying opinions on him. I don't know if it's all that different. I like what Mark Williams can bring, but you're not wrong in the fact that he does have his problems with the centers that get real physical with him, and the position for Mark Williams in the rim, he can get taken advantage of. And there are these rebounding opportunities that he's just not bringing in. Even with a double-digit rebounding performance from Mark Williams, there are still defensive and even offensively, going 5 of 12. Gone are the days of him having just the best field goal percentage, like in NBA history, like Wilt Chamberlain-esque, yes, at the beginning of the season. So gone are those days. What were some of the concerns that you had with Mark?
I wonder if at this point, if there's something going on upstairs, if he's in his own head a little bit, because you're right. The flashes that we got his rookie season, I would often comment, like when he got the ball in his hands offensively, he was super decisive with it, and his moves looked smooth, and he was able to chain multiple moves together in the post and get a good look. Didn't always go in, but got a good look, and you weren't afraid of him really turning the ball over under the basket, which is to me like the thing that centers do offensively a lot early on in their career. They get under the basket, they get a little wonky, they give defenses too much time to collapse, and then they get it stolen from them. Didn't happen a lot his rookie season, but I think we're seeing that go away a little bit here in the sophomore season as he gets, time as a starter, game after game. I do also think, though, if we're going to be fair about this, we have to understand that there's no backup center. That he's probably playing a ton of minutes, and the circumstances would be slightly different if they had somebody else behind him. But it's difficult right now, and teams know it. Like Claxton knew it. Day'Ron Sharp knew it. He played
Day'Ron,
like a guy.
To be fair, Day'Ron just plays like a bat out of hell every game he's ever played in his life. That's just how Day'Ron plays.
That's fine, but I just feel like I saw a look in his eye. I saw him salivating, a little look in his eye. Nothing like seeing a little look in his eye, right? I saw a little look in his eye like, this is my matchup tonight. I'm going to go and have a night.
The North Carolina Duke thing, too. I mean, you have that.
Could have been a little bit of that. Could have been a little of that. I'm just telling you. In my professional opinion, I saw a look in his eye.
One thing I'll say about Mark, because the shot making, that's going away. Not having LaMelo, he's going to be as affected by that as any other player on the court. So, Mark Williams, that's going to hurt him offensively, I would say. One thing that I do want to give him credit for is he actually is his offensive rebounding he's gobbled up a lot this year. And in fact, where Nick Richards usually gets all the love there, Mark Williams is actually third in offensive rebounds per game. He's third in contested offensive rebounds per game, which I actually think is meaningful to show that. I think you can see it too, because he is getting him over bodies. It's not that he's not playing in traffic. We'd rather him be more physical defensively, but he's third in offensive rebounds per game. And that's actually with offensive rebounding chances per game being less than the two guys in front of him, Mitchell Robinson, Clint Capella, and the one guy behind him in Rudy Gobert. So on less chances per game, he's right up there with the other best offensive rebounders. And I think you've seen that here late. I think that matters. So you're right. There are problems with Mark that I took for granted that just wouldn't happen this second season. I've said that a million times this year. But I still find actually a lot of value. Even 3 blocks last night, the foul that they called, Steve Clifford challenge, got right. That's a great recovery to help save that bucket. So Mark Williams still makes winning plays. It's just there are some losing plays with the physicality that you've pointed out quite a few times, deservedly so.
And yet the physical attributes that he possesses right now are what's getting him those offensive rebounds. There was a particular play when you started talking about that immediately came to mind in this last game against Brooklyn. I believe he was standing behind, I want to say it was Dwight Finney-Smith. And of course, he's taller and longer than DFS, and DFS is plenty long. But he essentially got just over his back and smacked the offensive rebound off the backboard and sort of made DFS jump out of time and then grab the offensive rebound. So he can do incredible stuff like that. And I think to me, it's a mix of he's already big, but he's got to get bulkier. I think he's got to find some way to get a little bit stronger. And then I think he's got to want to use that weight. Because look, he bragged about how much weight he had put on in media day. He was on Weight Watchers for sure. And it's great. I'm glad that you step on the scale and it shows a bigger number. I need you to show me that bigger number on the floor. I need you to try to push a guy out of the way instead of being pushed out of the way. We're waiting on that. And I don't think it's not going to happen. I don't want that to be sort of the read on my take here that he's just done. I don't think he's done by any stretch of the imagination. Steve Clifford would tell you, hey, this is kind of his rookie season because he played in Greensboro a lot. Yeah. And for a center, playing in the G League, they were really just waiting to trade Mason Plumlee, right? I mean,
And he was balling down there, by the way. He was.
Well, because when you're that size in the G League,
and skilled and smart,
you're gonna dominate. And so, I think we're just waiting on it, and I really am excited to see how he continues to learn from these mistakes this year, and then what he can do in this offseason to get a little stronger, and hopefully, again, want to use that weight because I think for so long he's used all the other stuff, and that works. As you saw in that play against Dwight Finney-Smith, but against Day'Ron Sharp, When he's got that look in his eye, not going to work.
All right, yeah, we could tell there was a look in the eye. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods. Go check out Doug's Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great weekend. We'll be back with you on Monday.